What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of the 715 Brew Crew Tailgates podcast as part of the Man Cave podcast. And Cass, we're here with you. Brandon Berg's going to join me here in just a second. Just a quick reminder to don't forget to follow and subscribe to not only the 715 Brew Crew Tailgate podcast, but the Man Cave podcast, which is brought to you by Hy-Vee in Eau Claire. All right, we've got spring training, pitchers and catchers reporting and such. So let's talk some Brewers with Brandon here this morning. So first off, let's kind of rewind it to a couple days ago. Brandon Woodruff tried to set the record straight a little bit with the media and said, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, he was reading some stuff. He did not suffer a setback. Today's actually a big day, Friday, because he's going to be facing batters for the first time since 2023. But obviously we'll know more after today and such, but when you heard Brandon Woodruff's comments and such and say, no, I didn't suffer a setback, progression, just got to take it slow, do you feel maybe a little bit more optimistic we're going to see Brandon Woodruff maybe earlier this season than initially? I think a lot of it actually came from Pat Murphy's interview with the Journal-Sentinel where he said, yeah, he's not going to be ready for spring training or probably regular season. I think everybody's like, whoa, what happened here? Right.
Shoulder injuries, you've got more of a ramp up time there too, especially coming back from one when you missed the entire season. So, but no, that's encouraging. I mean, I think he said too that he's just obviously when he's coming back from, he's just got kind of a different plan than what you're going to see a lot of other people. Mm-hmm. So that's encouraging. Obviously, we'll wait and see today, kind of what the report is coming off of the live BP. But yeah, I mean I took that as good news.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Other things. I mean, the DL Hall one is a crappy situation. I appreciate the Brewers though too. What did they do? They went out and brought in a veteran to kind of help fill that void, right? Tyler Alexander, another lefty pitcher in that. And again, this one we may not see DL Hall for a while. They said several weeks, but then I saw they'll reevaluate in a couple weeks and that sort of thing. But, what do you think are some of the biggest storylines heading into spring training when it comes to the Brewers? Like, you're a writer. What would you say is like some of the big storylines heading into this camp for the Brewers?
I mean, in no particular order, but one I'm very interested in is how that fourth position in the infield develops. And I say fourth position because we don't know if it's second base or third base. Mm-hmm. Because we know Joey Ortiz, Bryce Terang, Rhys Hoskins, they've got spots. Mm-hmm. But what's that fourth spot look like? Is it Caleb Durbin? Is it Oliver Dunn? Is it, is there somebody else that comes out of nowhere? We don't know. Mm-hmm. And right now there's just no obvious answer there. So that's something to kind of keep an eye on.
Whoever they pick to play shortstop has that trickle-down effect, right?
Right.
Right. I thought it was interesting. McCulvey's right now, and he admitted it could change, but he had Terang playing short. Yeah. Which, I mean, would you say that that's more so because Durbin may be a better second baseman than third baseman?
Could be. If there's positives and negatives to either alignment when it comes to Terang and Ortiz. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you're just gonna have to pick one, and it's not something you're gonna be bouncing someone between the two. Like when they're your everyday guy, you just say, hey, this is your spot, and you mm-hmm. go, and you kind of work around it. So, mm-hmm. yeah, that's one. I think a big one, too, is just going to be the health of, you could say Woodruff, too, but Christian Yelich. Yeah. Like, what does that look like? At this stage of the game, I would really love to see what a Christian Yelich that gets to play even 140 games looks mm-hmm. like. But, coming off of back surgery like this is significant. Mm-hmm. So what does that look like? Because we've seen last several years, obviously, the back has been the main battle for Christian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm also, and we can kind of lump a bunch of these guys together, but I just kind of want to see what's the next step for so many of these young guys. Yeah. What does year 2 for Jackson Chourio look like? What does Bryce Terang have another step forward in him? Can Garrett Mitchell stay healthy as well? Because Garrett Mitchell is another guy that if he gets 500 at-bats, I think there can be something really special there. That's just mm-hmm. always been kind of the issue. Sal Frelick, what does that look like?
Yeah.
That's, all these position players that, had found varying levels of success, but I would say they were all successful last year. Can they take another step forward? Because that would go a long way towards kind of absorbing the loss of Willie Adames. I'm not going to flat out say, hey, someone needs to go replace him, because that's a tough thing to ask any one person to do.
Right.
But can a bunch of people kind of absorb those? If one guy hits 4 home runs more, another guy hits 5 home runs more, then maybe you can kind of you can kind of work through that. That loss.
Right. Look, so I think everybody's still kind of waiting to see who's that spot. Let me just throw out a wild card name to this. Now, this ain't happening. Maybe if he was on a different team, something could be done. Nolan Arenado, would that be somebody? I know he's got a big contract and such, but it sure seems like he will not be playing for the Cardinals this year. The Cardinals really try to want to move on from him. I don't know if they would trade within division, but if that was a guy that was on another team and, they're trying to would that be a fit? Like, I'm trying to think of some third baseman. I know Bregman just signed, but now he's going to play second over at Boston and such. Because I think there's still some Brewers fans trying to figure out, okay, who would be out there available as a third base option? Would Nolan Arenado be a fit if it wasn't Cardinals situation?
It would have to be a situation where the Cardinals are eating a certain amount of money. And with that being said, then that would up maybe the potential return. But I don't know, because Nolan Arenado's defense is still good. Mm-hmm. But
and we know the Brewers prioritize that.
They do. But his offense has kind of taken a bit of a nosedive here in recent years. That's why they're looking to, they're so willing to move him. But I don't see that being a move that the Brewers would do, right or wrong. That's not something that strikes me as what they would do. Plus, Nolan Arenado, he's under contract for 3 more years still. Yes, in the immediate, right now here in 2025, yeah, I think last year he was around to being like league average with his bat. But then you get into 2026, 2027, and his salary goes down. He's making $15 million. So say the Cardinals pay half that, you're still paying $8 million for a guy that, might be, by that point, maybe like a below average offensive player. And then we'll see about the defense. Like, that doesn't strike me as the type of move the Brewers would do. You might be able to get somebody else to pull the trigger at that, because there's just kind of more wiggle room for them financially. But
now, when we talk about third base, you hear a lot of fans say you want that player to have power, and that's where maybe you're looking at whether it's Ortiz or whoever. It's they don't have the power. Do you agree with that sentiment that whoever's playing third, you'd like them to possess a little bit of power? And does this team really need more power in the lineup?
I think ideally you would, because last year Joey Ortiz playing third, and he played a good third defensively, and his numbers, after the injury last year were different than before. He was much better before, so there's optimism that maybe back now he's fully over that, but. They were able to kind of absorb that, not as much power, because you had to stop the hit for power. I think, ideally you'd like it. It's not a bad thing to have power, but I think as long as you're productive, you can kind of find ways to work through that.
Yeah, I think that's like the big domino. That's where I'm curious or anxious maybe to get these scrimmages and games going to see kind of where it's at. Do you think it's an open job between Ortiz and Terang for short right now?
I don't know, because
or do you think they have a good idea and maybe just kind of keeping it close?
I think they have a good idea, because I think both of them can do the job defensively well. Like, that's not an issue. I think it's just a matter of kind of picking one way or the other, and going with it. Because both those guys are going to be everyday starters.
Right.
So it's not like it's two guys battling for one job. It's just a matter of, you kind of just got to pick what is it? Is it? Are you accounting for second base and short, or are you accounting for shortstop and third?
Because when I've gone back and forth this on the Terang part, because he's a Gold Glove winner at second, but he's also the Platinum Glove winner, which was the best defender overall. So it's like, well, do you want to move him from that position where he won that? But then on the other side, it's like, well, if he's the best defender, do you want to put him at short then and really showcase?
Right, and he came up as a shortstop. So, and yeah, I can see either way with it. I think if there was more of a firm option at third, that might make the decision, which I guess if there's more of a firm option at second, that might make that decision too. But I think we'll see it early on here. Is there will just be a decision, you just go with it, whatever it is.
What would be the better defensive, maybe, position in your opinion? Caleb playing third, and then Ortiz is at short with Terang at second, or Caleb Durbin playing second with Terang at short and Ortiz at third?
Probably Durbin at second, and that's more of speaking strictly on his end of things.
Right.
There is some, and you brought this up, but there is something to be said for having that up the middle combo. Mm-hmm. You know, that if Ortiz was short and Terang was second, like I can definitely get behind that, because you know teams definitely put together their defenses with wanting to be strong up the middle, catcher, second base, shortstop, center field. Mm-hmm. But I think if this is about putting whoever that other person is in the best position to succeed, I think it would be Durbin at second.
Mm-hmm. I swear I go back and forth every day on who I think it's going to be, whether it's going to be Ortiz or whether it's going to be Terang. Like I was like, oh yeah, it's Ortiz, because that just felt like that was the natural progression. But then you look at maybe the lack of moves over there, you kind of like, okay, maybe it is Terang that's going to go over there.
Right, and there could still be something done there, and there's not a whole lot out there for agency, but if the Brewers sign, say, Jose Iglesias, and remember last year that the Brewers signed Gary Sanchez when spring training was already underway. Mm-hmm. I think it was closer to the end-ish of February, so it's possible that could happen. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's a couple guys maybe the reason they're being vague is there's still a couple guys out there they have their eye on, but the price isn't quite right yet.
Right. Looking at some of this, so looking at like the pitching and why, do you have a problem with Pat Murphy already declaring Freddie as the opening day starter?
No.
I mean, what other? Tobias was probably the better pitcher, but is he ready to be that guy?
Yeah, and no, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, to me, that's the, I don't say safe option, but that was the expected option. And normally, you don't always hear managers ready, do that, even when like, I mean, there were times where, people would be kind of counting backwards based on when is this pitcher pitching, to see like, oh, well, he's currently, he's on trajectory to be, to start opening day and that kind of stuff. But no, I don't have a problem with him just coming out saying, no, that's, this is our guy, this is what we're going to go with, and it's not a surprise.
Mm-hmm. When you look at this team now as we head into the postseason, I know there's projections and that, and maybe the other part too that I think a lot of people are trying to figure out is the outfield. I know you and I have talked about that and how that's going to be made up and such. That to me is like one with the whole third. I don't know if I want Sal Frelick playing third.
I don't either. I don't like, as much as we say, well, Joey Ortiz may not be the ideal bat for third, Sal Frelick really isn't. Plus, it's a big difference moving someone that's a Gold Glover in the outfield to the infield. Mm-hmm. I'm a believer in like put people in the best position to succeed. And if I would rather go with whoever that other infielder is, if it means you're keeping Sal Frelick in the outfield. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's a great fit for third, and especially trying to kind of put a square peg in a round hole.
Well, and it's like, I could see if Sal maybe had power.
Right.
Then you're like, okay, then there's your power fit. But I feel like if you move Sal there, isn't that the same as just having Ortiz there or Caleb Durbin play over there?
And it's a guy that has less experience.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, I think we kind of said it last year, too, with the outfield when Joey Weimer was still on the team, and that's like, okay, where's everybody going to play? And naturally it would work out, whether it's an injury or such.
And usually it does.
Mm-hmm. In this case, though, I think you're really hoping, for one, Garrett Mitchell doesn't get hurt in spring training again.
Right.
You don't want injuries to happen.
No.
So if it's not,
it's a good problem to have.
Yeah. But if it's not, could you see a scenario where Christian Yelich plays half the games as DH this year?
Yeah. And I know that's something he really doesn't want to do. He says like he's more engaged when he's out playing the outfield, and I get that. But especially early on in the year, coming off the back injury, the surgery, until you kind of know how he's feeling over the longer term, you got a bigger sample size.
Yep.
I don't mind them taking a bit easier on him. Now, Rhys Hoskins is not an ideal first baseman at this stage of the game, defensively.
Right.
But it's just kind of a trade-off you're going to have to make, especially because right now, Jake Bauers is in camp on a minor league deal. We'll see what happens there. But Tyler Black is someone as well that, my feeling is like at some point you just have to give him an opportunity.
Do you think he's the guy for the defensive first base?
Maybe, but defense isn't his strong suit. But I think he's better than like Hoskins would be at that.
Because that's my question. Like, who would be that guy?
Yeah.
That you'd put in there for a defensive purpose?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it would probably be Bowers, but I would prefer it to be someone else. Like, they went through the thing with Bowers last year, and yeah, he could play defense, and obviously he had some timely hits, but it's just like, I think you just need more than that. And Tyler Black is someone I just want to see get that opportunity, even though he's not a classically tooled first baseman. You know, also because he's played around the infield. Some people think his best position might be the outfield, but with the Brewers, that's probably not going to happen, at least right away.
Right.
And he's someone that's played a good chunk of 2 years at AAA. And at this point, I just don't see what else you had, because you can still send him down, but I don't see what else is to be gained by having him play even more at AAA. I think if you play someone, if you do that to somebody for a certain amount of time, they kind of plateau. Like, I think you just need to say, hey, you're going to be on the team. We're going to give you an opportunity to play. Maybe it's not every day, but 4 times a week. Like, and he's someone that could be a late inning, maybe a pinch runner / defensive sub for Hoskins, because he can steal bases. Like, he has a unique skill set for first base. He is a really good eye at the plate, and he can steal bases, which you don't really hear out of first baseman. But that's something that this team, certainly values, as we've seen, and another one wouldn't hurt.
Going back to third base, just really quick here, for the longest time, it was like first base was, and still is to the sense, like a revolving position. Wasn't it like Rowdy Tellez was the first one to start opening days back-to-back?
Since Prince
Fielder.
Yeah.
But then I was thinking, like, you think back to, like, it wasn't that dramatic for third baseman, but you went, Casey McGee, Aramis Ramirez when they had him for a couple years.
Ramirez was kind of stabilizing, but then
Travis Shaw for a couple years.
I mean, Moustakas obviously worked in there. Like, it hasn't been as much. There's been more, but there hasn't been as much stability there. And there's some younger players in the minors that maybe are a year away. That maybe the Brewers look at this as like a short-term thing, because Mike Bovee is someone that some scouts really like, or there's some other guys that, maybe in a year's time when we're having this conversation, it's, this young guy's ready to just, play every day. So maybe that's why they don't want to invest too much into it, because they know, or they believe in the potential players that could be here sooner than later.
Right. When spring training gets going and games get going, what are some of the things that, because it's hard for spring training, right? Because you have pitchers trying to work on things, and so, like, what do you kind of follow or pay attention to when these games start going?
This year specifically, it's going to be the infield and how that kind of points out. And for some of these injured people, like, is Christian Yelich playing right away? If not, that's not a big deal. I mean, we saw over the years with Ryan Braun, he needed like 3 games and he was good. Some people need to play every day, some don't. Like, I just kind of want to see, once we get to the midway point and maybe a little beyond in spring training, like, where are these players at?
Yeah. All right, that is going to do it for us on this episode of the 715 Brew Crew Tailgates podcast. A big thanks, as always, for Brandon for joining me on this episode. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to the 715 Brew Crew Tailgate podcast or the Man Cave podcast, because remember, this is a part of the Man Cave podcast. Until next time, Brewers fans, we'll chat with you on the next episode of the 715 Brew Crew Tailgate.